Hello and welcome. If you've been here before, welcome back. And if you've not been here before, today we're going to be discussing some thrifty ways to crochet. I wanted to kind of have like a segment on my channel about thrifty crochet, which is basically buying things cheap, upcycling, just doing DIY stuff. As someone who's never had like an excessive amount of money, I've had to learn how to be crafty and crochet with what I have and finding things in different places than the typical yarn store. So, to start off with today, I wanted to discuss how you guys can go shopping for supplies to crochet or even knit or do any other kind of crafting without having to go to the craft stores that can be a little bit pricey. I wanted to show you guys some other options you have for shopping and how to find things because it's not as easy as it is to just go into a regular store and find what you need. Sometimes you need to look a little bit harder and get creative. So first off, obviously the thrift store is going to be a really good place to find materials for crocheting, knitting, any kind of sewing, anything that you want to do regarding craft or creating clothing. The thrift store is a great place to go because there is a lot of options. There's a lot of stuff from different eras, different textures, different patterns, different cultures. There's everything that you can think of at the thrift store. You just have to look and maybe be consistent with looking, and you will find some great stuff. So, yarn is super commonly donated. If you haven't gone to the thrift store in your local area and looked for yarn, you should if you are on a budget because it's actually very plentiful there. I find a lot at the thrift store by my house, and a lot of people shop at that one, but there's always yarn still, so that means it's being frequently donated. But they will typically take 3 or 4 different skeins and put them all in one bag and sell them as one piece so you can get a different variety of things. A lot of the yarn is like vintage. You'll find things that you will not find in stores anymore. You could even tell from the label that it's kind of old school, which is really cool because you're not finding stuff like that on the shelves anymore. And if you aren't finding any skeins of yarn, there's actually a lot of blankets and stuff at the thrift store that get donated that were handmade by somebody at some point. And while it's sad to like see their work be undone, it is a rebirthing of a new project. So to take the yarn from something that was made previously and give it a new purpose is the point of recycling and doing thrifty crochet. It's kind of giving the yarn a new life after, having been something before. Blankets have a lot of yarn on them, so you will pretty much get a fair amount if you were to just grab one blanket and take it apart. There's different colors sometimes. You can spin them all up. It's kind of a lot of work, but it's definitely worth having to do that rather than spend money that you don't have on craft supplies. Along with other craft supplies at the thrift store, there's a lot of things that aren't in the crochet category that you can still find use out of. They have a lot of jewelry. You can take that jewelry, take it apart, repurpose it. They also have things like embellishments, like ribbons, sequins, beads, stuff like that that you can add cute little embellishments to your pieces with. So I made this skirt just recently. I finished it up and I actually used some ribbon that I got at the thrift store. Super cute. I think the beads are from the thrift store too. I don't know if you can really see them, but so I got my little embellishments at the thrift store. It's really cheap. There's a lot of stuff that goes out. You can also find really useful things like books at the thrift store. There's like design books for knitting, for crochet. They have knitting needles and crochet hooks there too, which is another tool that you would need to crochet with. You really just have to like look around and get creative with your mind. Think of what could be used for different things and how can things be upcycled and turned into something new. Now, this is definitely more of like crafty than convenient, but you can actually make like t-shirt yarn out of things from the thrift store if you wanted to do like a scrappy kind of project. You could find different materials or even like just simple plain tank tops and cut it up essentially and make a yarn out of it. It wouldn't be like a typical yarn that you would find at the thrift store. It would be like t-shirt yarn. So it would give you kind of a different feel and result in the end. But it is really cool to do t-shirt yarn projects. There's all sorts of different things that you can do with t-shirt yarn. And just while I'm at it, I know you don't really find plastic bags at the thrift store, but plastic bags can also be made into yarn and made into things that can be used in your household. It's not ideal, I would say, to wear something made out of plastic. Even acrylic is pretty uncomfortable if you're asking me. But there's like little daily household items that you can make and ways that you can just repurpose the plastic bags into something else, which is a very eco-friendly kind of crochet. The last place that I'm going to recommend you to get things for crochet material is yard sales and even like online on Facebook Marketplace. A lot of times yarn doesn't even make it to the thrift store, it just stays stashed away in people's houses, and they'll occasionally put everything out on their yard for a yard sale or something, and you can find some good stuff there too, along with other craft supplies as well. Every time I go on Facebook Marketplace or even OfferUp, I can look up yarn and I will find a lump sum of yarn sold at one price, and they'll just give it all to you because they're usually just trying to get rid of it because it does take up a lot of space, and when it's not being used it's more of a burden than anything. This way you're able to kind of bargain with people, you can ask them questions, see maybe they have other craft supplies and they can do a bundle for you, and then you can get a bunch of stuff from somebody and it gets directly rehomed and reused into something and give it a new life. While this isn't necessarily thrifty crochet, there is actually some pretty good yarn at the dollar store. There's a lot of brands that sell at other craft stores that also make things for the dollar store. They're just sold in much smaller skeins, so it's more of like a small project friendly kind of shopping. But also, if you're new at crochet, the dollar store is a great place because the yarn is nice. They have options there. They have a lot of specialty yarns like velvet yarn or plush yarn, and then they have a lot of stuff like cotton, which is really durable. And I would say that cotton is a good starter for somebody who's learning. And then they have other craft supplies at the dollar store as well, like pipe cleaners and felts, like little scraps of fabric that you can cut up and add to whatever crochet piece that you're working on. Places like craft stores and Walmart are going to have a clearance section as well that I think is important to check out, because while it is a lot of the yarn that nobody wanted per se, that doesn't mean it's not good. It just means maybe the color's not ideal, maybe the texture, but it doesn't hurt to look. They also have a lot of coupons and stuff. I know that Joann's, which is going out of business, Joann's does a lot of coupons. I'm sure Michael's does them too, but Michael's only sells their brand of yarn. Recipes Joann's, seriously. But while they are doing their clearance sales, it is a good time to get out there and buy the yarn while you still can. You can also look online for yarn. This isn't my typical preferred way, but it might have to be soon because Joann's is closing. They do a lot of bulk online, so you can buy like 6 skeins of one color on Amazon or something like that if you're interested in that. It's kind of more for business owners, I would say, or people who are making something massive. I don't need 6 skeins of one kind of yarn personally, but they also will do variety packs and they have stuff on clearance as well. I prefer to like feel my yarn in person before I buy it, so I don't really buy online too often, but I would say that if you were doing research on the yarn and see some reviews of it and how people like it, then there's no harm in ordering it from online. That's just my personal preference. There's also a handful of crafting companies that do like newsletters and they'll have sales and stuff. You can just check on their websites. Some examples of those are going to be Lion's Brand, Joann's, Michael's, and then there's even options to do like a monthly subscription to different yarns where they'll send you a variety of different kinds and colors and brands, and you can just check them out and see how you like them. If you can't feel your yarn first, you can at least get a subscription and get an idea of a variety of kinds so that you know what you want to work with on your next project. While I could just sit here and talk about yarn for the rest of the video, I want to actually go to the thrift store, take you guys with me, and show you what it looks like to shop there at the thrift store or any other discount stores for craft supplies and yarn. So my first stop was to Goodwill down the street from my house. I found that there was a lot of brand new skeins and they were packaged together 2 for $5. They had knit and crochet, Lion's brand, some Red Heart. They just had all sorts of different brands, but I've never found so many brand new skeins at this store, so it was kind of exciting for me. After taking a look at their yarn selection, I went to go see what kind of blankets I could find, and I found this beauty here. Look at the stitching. And then this pink one was so soft. I really wanted to know what kind of yarn they used. Next, I went to Savers, and here's their jewelry selection, just so you guys can see how much different stuff they have and how you could take this stuff apart and use it in like your own projects. There's all sorts of different cool, funky shapes and colors. Savers also had some nice brand new yarn, and I even found these like fuzzy skeins all together in one package, so I had to take that for myself. I also just wanted to mention that you can frame a lot of crochet work and make it into like home decor. I also found this super cute granny square blanket. The last thrift store that I went to was called Castaways, and this one had a really cool selection of handmade blankets. I didn't really find that much yarn there, but I did find a lot of sewing supplies as well as one of these things for cross stitching and just overall lots of spools of thread. They had a lot of different kinds of fabrics too that looked really old because I don't see Joanne selling stuff like this anymore. I didn't buy anything from here, but I did think it was such a cute little shop. Next is a dollar store, and I would just like to pause and say I'm sorry for how messy this is. I don't know why I'm apologizing for the dollar store and their mess, but yeah, I mean, it's just a hot mess. But overall, they do have a nice selection of small little skeins. You can get them in all sorts of different colors. I found that they had just some nice acrylic yarn. I've actually used this cotton yarn before, and it's very durable. Okay, guys, we are back from the thrift store. I was going to show you guys my haul. So I got two of these knit and crochet cotton yarns. They're really soft, actually. It's like the softest cotton I've ever felt. And it was two of these for $5. Good deal. Sorry about the rainbows all over me, too. I have a privacy film on my window and it makes rainbows everywhere. And then I did find these little, like, super vintage looking fuzzy yarns. They had two different bags of them, so I grabbed them both. This isn't like what you would typically crochet with unless you're using a really small hook, but this can be layered with other yarns to add kind of like a fuzzy texture, and I think that's going to be really fun. Kind of just like, when are you going to find this at the craft store all at once for this cheap? Never. Okay, I'm going to open this up to show you guys kind of what they look like because you can't really see it through the bag. So this is something called Fun Fur by Lions Brand. This doesn't look too old compared to some of the other ones. It's a pretty thin skein, so this is something that you would use like a really small hook with or incorporate it into another, like two layers of yarn that you would crochet together. But it would really add like a cool, fun, like fuzzy effect. I have like all sorts of different colors now, and they're really soft, so I'm excited. This one's okay, my bad. They're kind of like all different textures, which is really cool because I can make something like really cool and scrappy looking with them. These ones kind of look like eyelashes almost, like, like strip lashes. But yeah, so while this is someone else's like yarn scraps that they never used, they are significantly cheaper than what they were originally sold for. This one says it was $5.99 for this little guy, which is pricey because it's like a novelty kind of yarn and it's a small skein. One of these is $5.99, while I went to the thrift store and paid $6.99 for the whole bag. So it's really nice to be able to get everything in like kind of like bulk for a cheaper price. You also find things that you wouldn't really find at the craft store anymore. Also, this isn't crochet stuff, but I found this vase. Beautiful. There's a rainbow on it, sorry, but the thrift store is so good for finding things that you would never find and never know you needed to begin with. I wish you all luck with your thrifting for yarn and other craft supplies. I'm praying the thrift gods bless you. Remember that the key is being consistent and thoroughly looking through the store, using your creativity to come up with new ideas for projects, and just getting experimental with things because that's what crafting is essentially. I wish you all luck with your thrifting endeavors, and I will see you next time if you care to come around.